It's your boy Luke here for our Thanksgiving Day DFS slate picks. This is my favorite day of the entire year. Between the food, between the booze, between the football for the entire day, what's not to love about it? So what we'll do in this video is we're going to get you guys completely prepared for this 3-game slate. We're going to go game by game, talk about some of the injuries in play and whatnot. And of course, we're going to talk about my favorite 3 plays at each position, because it's just like a main slate. We have to take a quarterback, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, a flex, all of that sort of fun stuff. So rather than having a showdown build where we're just trying to take the highest projected plays, a little bit more thought going into it, a little bit more game theory in play as well. So with that being said, let's first start off with a little bit of a game by game breakdown. First game of the day is going to be Chicago at Detroit. This is the lowest over-under on the slate at just 41.5 points. And honestly, this is where you want to target a defense. You're probably going to have Andy Dalton throwing the ball for the Bears. And on the other side, very likely to be Tim Boyle heading the Detroit offense, which is not a great situation for either team. There's also a relatively close spread here, which I guess gives it a semblance of hope. The Bears are just favored by 3.5 points. But like I said, with both of those quarterbacks likely to be sidelined, not necessarily the best game for fantasy purposes. We also have Allen Robinson III, who's also highly questionable to play for the Bears. Next up, we have the Las Vegas Raiders at the Dallas Cowboys. This is the highest total on the slate at 50.5 points. It's also the largest spread, unfortunately, with Dallas favored by a whole 8 points. And to be quite honest with you, I love targeting this in DFS, and it doesn't really have to be the Cowboys side. Both defenses have looked very suspect of late, letting up a ton of points. At the beginning of the year, both of them looked a lot better than they were in the past, but have regressed back to what we expected from them at the beginning of the year. This is definitely going to be a chalky game to target, but I think a key way to differentiate yourself here would just be to take the Raiders side of things. Even if they end up getting blown out here, there's a really good chance that in garbage time they end up putting up some decent fantasy numbers. So you'll see with our picks a little bit later on, definitely like both sides of the game here, but particularly the Raiders because they're a little bit sneaky in my opinion. In terms of some of the injuries, we have Amari Cooper, who already has COVID issues, will not be able to play on Thursday. He was unvaccinated, so has that 10-day window, and unfortunately will not be over by the game time comes around. We also have CeeDee Lamb, who's also in the concussion protocol, has not been able to practice to this point of the week. And honestly, for him to pass that concussion protocol in just 4 days, it's like a 50-50 shot. So a true game time decision. We'll have to see the news on Thursday morning on whether he's expected to play. But lastly, we have Buffalo at New Orleans. This is, I'd say, the average game on the slate, 46.5 point over-under. Buffalo favored by just 4.5 points. So you like to see that this should be a relatively competitive game. But unfortunately, both these defenses have been stingy. Obviously, Buffalo was the #1 defense in the league before last week. New Orleans has also been very formidable themselves. We've seen them step up in some primetime games and obviously expect them to do so here, and they'll need to against Buffalo. So we have Trevor Siemian, who's likely to start for New Orleans, which isn't going to be great. And even further so, we have Taysom Hill, who's going to be mixed in for red zone packages, which isn't great either. We have Alvin Kamara, who was just rolled out this morning here on Tuesday, which means Mark Ingram is going to start if he's healthy enough to, because he's also questionable himself. And if he ends up being rolled out, which as of right now, it looks like he is going to play, but if he has a setback, they'll have to return to Tony Jones Jr. and Alex Arma, which is not a great look. But again, as of right now, Ingram is practicing and should be able to suit it up. And on the other side of things with Buffalo, they looked absolutely horrible last time out. But in games where they've struggled this year, where they've gone out and laid an egg, they have bounced back in big ways. So if Dallas continues to soak up a ton of the ownership on this slate, obviously I already talked about Las Vegas as a sneaky option. Buffalo could also end up being sneaky as well. All right, now for the player picks. At quarterback, first off, we have Josh Allen, who, like I said, this Buffalo team is going to be a little bit sneakier than they should be. And it's Josh Allen, for Christ's sake. This guy's one of the best quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Also a decent matchup in this game as well. Saints defense has been relatively good this year, but they've also gotten into some of these shootouts where they've kind of just laid down on defense, let the other team score at will. And Josh Allen's obviously a guy who's not afraid to do that. We've seen him go out there, score 35, 40 fantasy points at times. And on the Thanksgiving slate, with the entire nation's eyes on him, I expect him to go out and try to put on a show. So I have him projected as clearly the best quarterback on the slate at 20.7 points. The price tag is definitely up there. He's the most expensive player on the slate, but I think that's well warranted. This is somebody who is going to give you a lot of consistent production at quarterback, gets you some rushing yardage. He's going to throw for nearly 300 yards every single week. And on this 3-game slate, definitely making him a priority. My second option would be Dak Prescott. I like the price tag, obviously $900 cheaper than Josh Allen. That gives you a little bit of flexibility with wide receiver and running back. But unfortunately, he's also a ton more popular. You're talking about 35% expected ownership for Dak Prescott right now, just 15% for Josh Allen. And if you're telling me that Dak Prescott is twice as likely as Josh Allen to go out there and succeed, I'd say you're full of it. That's just not true. We know Josh Allen, if he's not the best fantasy quarterback out there for this year, he's at the very least top 3. So no disrespect to Dak Prescott. I just think he's a little bit too popular here. Definitely still going to be in my player pool, but not anyone I'm trying to get a significant amount of leverage on. If he's going to come in at right around 35% ownership, I'm probably going to come in just under the field, right around 25%, because there's definitely an avenue for him to have some success. Again, I really like the price tag. I like the matchup as well. It's the highest over-under on the slate. Just unfortunately, the field is there, and they're a little bit too much in my opinion. So at 19.5 projected points, I'd say just about an average option on the slate. But at number 3, we have Derek Carr, who is coming in even cheaper than somebody like Dak Prescott, is also playing in that high over-under game, just on the other side, and frankly has a very similar matchup. We've seen this Cowboys team get roasted over these last few weeks, obviously last week with that disappointing loss, but the week before that against the Chiefs also just got absolutely destroyed against the pass. So Derek Carr there at $5,900, he obviously gives you even more flexibility than somebody like a Dak Prescott, but gives you also some high-end upside as well. I have him projected for a median projection of 17.5 fantasy points, but he truly has a 27, 28 plus point ceiling as well. So like going there a whole lot. If you're going to use a stack on the Raiders, you're also going to be able to save some salary as well. So you can pretty much play whoever you want in those stacks. You're also able to leave some salary on the table, which would make your lineup even more unique. Next up, we have the running backs, and quite frankly, there's not a ton of running backs I like here. My number 1 and number 2 option are going to be by far my highest owned players on the slate, just because after those top 2, it really starts to fall off. So at the top of the board, we have DeAndre Swift at $7,300, but he doesn't have a great matchup on paper. He's essentially this whole Lions offense, especially without Jared Goff at quarterback. Last week, we saw Swift get well over 100 yards rushing, had that super long rushing touchdown at the end, and he didn't even have his usual receiving upside. So if he's somebody who goes out here, gets his usual 7 to 8 catches, is still getting those 20 to 25 touches at running back, he's a borderline lock on this slate. The only reason that I'm not higher on him, the only reason I don't have him at over a 20-point projection is the over-under. This is supposed to be a dreadful game with not much offense on each side. So that makes me a little bit cautious here, but he's going to be by far the highest used player in this game. So if anybody's going to pay it off, if anybody's going to have a ceiling game, definitely DeAndre Swift, and I'm not avoiding him at any cost. Next up, we have Mark Ingram, who is going to be the man in the hour, likely to go way up in terms of his projected ownership, but with Kamara, who was projected to play, but now is going to be out, he was sub 5% ownership. Obviously, that is going to go up, but at $6,200, I expect him to grade out as one of the best plays on the slate. Last week and the week before was getting a ton of touches in this New Orleans offense, and obviously understands the scheme, was playing there for over 10 years of his career, was extremely successful even as just the number 2 option on that team, but now as the clear number 1 workhorse back here, especially without Kamara, he's going to be in line for some crazy production. So the matchup isn't ideal. Obviously, this is a relatively lower scoring game, especially when you compare it to that Raiders-Cowboys game. But with the type of usage we expect, it gives you some safety at running back, but also some top-end upside. And when we have 3-game slates like this, sometimes we only have 1 or 2 of these running backs we can really count on. And for me, Swift and Ingram are head and shoulders above the rest. But at number 3, we have Ezekiel Elliott, who makes the list just based on his median projection. You know, his floor here, he's $8,000, which I really don't like. That is well too expensive for Ezekiel Elliott. Even more expensive than Josh Allen, actually. The matchup is all right. I mean, we expect him to go out and beat this Raiders team. But at the same time, Elliott is a little bit hurt. He's not on 100% capacity as of right now. And I don't expect him to get the 25 to 30 touches he needs to pay off that $8,000 price tag. So he makes this list because he does project nicely at 17.2 points. But when we consider the price tag and the opportunity cost of using somebody like an Elliott, particularly at over 20% projected ownership, so it's not like he's coming in as a sneaky play, I really don't like him. So, he's on this list. He makes it because we don't have many other options to speak of. If he ends up making a few of your lineups, so be it. I'm probably going to have right around 15-20% in my player pool, but well less than what the field has. I mean, right now projected for 21.2% ownership. Could come in even higher than that, especially with all the casuals expected to play this Thursday. So, And now let's hop into the wide receivers. At number one, we have Emmanuel Sanders of the Bills. Is my favorite stacking option on this Bills team, especially because of the price tag. He just, quite frankly, is way underpriced. Should probably be closer to $6,000 on this 3-game slate. The matchup is nice. We expect the Bills to go out and be productive. I mean, they have Josh Allen as the quarterback, so nothing you can really complain about there. For 16.1 projected points, definitely somebody I'll have not only in my Josh Allen stacks, but likely as a one-off as well. Next up, we have Michael Gallup, who's also in a very good situation. Amari Cooper's not playing, so we know he's at least going to be the number 2 wide receiver. But if CeeDee Lamb is also rolled out, he becomes an even more attractive play. So as of right now, with Lamb in, I have him projected for 15.4 points. The matchup isn't that great on paper. You know, they're dealing with the 4th-ranked defense in terms of the pass. Just last week, we saw Jonathan Taylor go out against the NFL's best running defense and score 5 touchdowns and over 50 fantasy points. So anytime you have a good situation, don't let a matchup completely dictate what you're doing with your player pool. Michael Gallup is going to have plenty of opportunity to go out and succeed. And quite frankly, on a 3-game slate where we don't have a ton of value out there, he is a slam dunk play. But lastly, at number 3, we have Hunter Renfrow. And if you're going to pivot off of anybody, to anybody off of Gallup, I guess it would be Hunter Renfrow at $5,600, projecting at a very similar rate there at 15.7 points, actually at a higher projection than somebody like Gallup. It comes in with a much lower ceiling. Hunter Renfrow hasn't gone out there and had a ceiling performance this year. He's just giving you a ton of consistency. He's usually going out there getting you 7 to 9 catches, usually between 70 to 80 receiving yards, and he's consistently giving you the 16 to 17 points in fantasy, which if you're in cash, you absolutely love. But if you're in a large field GPP, I'm not sure whether he's actually ever won you a GPP contest. He just doesn't have that true top end upside. And even if he is in one of those GPP winning lineups, he wasn't the reason that you won. He was more of a placeholder, was kind of getting you by. So that's why he's not higher on this list. Has a very high median projection, which you like for cash, but definitely doesn't have the type of upside that a Sanders or a Gallup does. Just isn't that good after the catch. It's more reliant on the yards in terms of PPR, which is great here for DraftKings, but not as great for somebody's ceiling. And finally, let's finish up with our tight ends. Our number 1 tight end is going to be Darren Waller at $6,400, coming in with a great matchup. And again, with the highest over-under in the slate being between this Cowboys-Raiders game, Darren Waller should see plenty of looks, plenty of touches, and plenty of opportunity to go out and pay off that price tag. So obviously, if you're not taking somebody like Elliott at running back, you're likely going to have enough salary to spend up for somebody like a Darren Waller. So he's not very hard to fit into your lineups. And actually, I like some of these tight ends so much, I'm going to be using quite a few 2 tight ends lineups where I put one at flex, one at the regular tight end position. And Darren Waller would definitely be one of those 2 tight ends. The other one I would consider in those 2 tight end lineups would certainly be Dalton Schultz at $5,300. Also a very good matchup against tight ends, but moreover than anything, he's not dealing with Blake Jarwin in the mix. And we've seen Dalton Schultz get a huge uptick in terms of his production. And even though defenses are able to hunker down on him a little bit more, he is by far the most trusted target for Dak Prescott. You've seen that year after year, especially during this season. When it gets down into crunch time, whether it's in the red zone or 3rd down, he is looking Schultz's way. So I expect a very big game here. And while he didn't necessarily have a ceiling performance last week, had more than enough opportunity to do so. Was the most targeted player on the Cowboys team last week, especially after CeeDee Lamb went down. We're already dealing with Cooper sidelined with COVID. Dalton Schultz, if CeeDee Lamb is out, and of course Cooper's already been rolled out, becomes an even better play. So much like a Michael Gallup, they provide a lot of value on the slate, but also a ton of upside as well in this type of a game script. But now we will wrap it up with Dawson Knox at $4,400, who I don't get the price tag. This guy should be priced much higher. He's definitely somebody I'm going to be using in my Josh Allen stacks, but also as a one-off because he provides a lot of points per dollar value there. The matchup isn't that great. I mean, obviously top 10 defense against tight ends right there, but his median projection at 13.7 points pretty much tells you everything you need to know about him. He's getting plenty of targets in this offense, usually being targeted right around 6 times a game, giving you plenty of yardage, but moreover than anything, giving you tons of red zone touchdown upside. So I like going there a whole lot, especially if Josh Allen's able to find them for a touchdown here on Thursday night. That's all for the Thanksgiving Day preview. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments who you have as your favorite stack on the slate. Obviously, I like how the Cowboys stack projects, but for me, I think the Buffalo stack projects almost as highly, but at much lower ownership, so that's who I'm going to be going with. But go ahead and let me know who you've got down in the comments. I always love to hear from you guys. And as always, also appreciate all of your support here on the channel. If you guys haven't already liked the video or subscribed to the channel, make sure that you guys go ahead and do so. We're gonna have plenty of NFL content coming throughout the week, whether it's for the main slate, for showdown slates. We got you covered all over the board for DraftKings DFS, and of course our regular golf content returning next week. NBA content being sprinkled in left and right, so tons out there for everyone. So good luck with all of your lineups for Thanksgiving. Have a great Thanksgiving. Drink lots of beer, eat lots of food, and enjoy the time with your family, guys.